Welcome to the X's and Argos film session for Game 16, Week 19 in the CFL schedule. My name is Ben Grant. This week against the Edmonton Elks, the Argos defense allowed just about 180 yards on the ground and yet came away with a win. So how'd they do that? Well, because rushing yards in the CFL don't really matter that much if you can eliminate the pass. And all the proof you need is in looking at yards per carry, because statistically, Edmonton and Saskatchewan are second and third best in the CFL. And how are their seasons going? Why? Because they're second last in passing yards and yards per attempt. You need both. Running alone won't do it. So Toronto was happy to let Edmonton run all over the place as long as it didn't help them set up the pass. And they were able to hold the Elks to a miserable 185 yards through the air. Let's see how they did it. All right, here we see Toronto in their base defense. This is how they lined up for just about every 1st and 10 situation. So I want you to notice that we've got Chris Edwards here at corner instead of at Sam, where he's been playing most of the season. Edwards is a lot of things, but he's not a corner. Now, this is a bit of a technicality because clearly he can play corner, but he's not a corner. He's a Sam backer, he's a safety, he's a halfback. He's never really seen much time at corner at any level of football. So why is he out here? Well, it turns out Chris Edwards fits the corner mold of Coach Mace's defense really well. He's 6'2", 220, great length, wonderful instincts in zone, and the ability to shut down intermediate routes, and also a knack for being able to come downhill and blow up receivers and backs in the flats. So who does that sound like? That's right, it sounds like this guy, Jamal Peters. And you'll notice in this game, Cornelius stayed away from the rails for the most part in favor of the middle of the field. And look at the versatility that we've got here. So Coach Mace didn't show anything exotic in the first half, but there's so much potential going forward. You've got Shaq at Sam, but he can also play halfback and corner. Priester is at boundary half, but he can play Sam and corner. And there's just so many cool things Toronto can do when they sort of mix and match the guys that they have who can largely play anywhere. Here we got the Elks in quads. And when I start to play here, Brown is going to bounce out into the slot. All 8 defenders in coverage can now bail out. And notice that there's no flats concern. Look what we got here. Everybody is gone. Jagger Davis and Robbie Smith, they're setting the edge. They're not recklessly flying in. And that's going to allow Oakman and Achampong to really close it down. So there's nowhere for Cornelius to throw. There's too many guys in coverage. Oakman eventually buries him. This is great downfield coverage made possible courtesy of this responsible 4-man rush and a strong finish from CN Power. 2nd and 9 now. Mace is going to bring out a lineman in this scenario, and this is something we saw a lot in 2nd down. So Robbie Smith, in this case, comes out in favor of another DB, Tavares McFadden, and they're going to replace Jones with Hoyt at Willbacker. So now we've got a 3-man rush, 7 DBs, Enoch Mwamba holding down the middle, and a smaller, faster backer in the game. This play is going to end up being a loss for Toronto, but it's the best example I could find of this unit and their flexibility up until the point that Priester got injured, because after that, it did sort of change their game plan a little bit. So McFadden, who just came in, is now going to play field corner, which suits him really well. He's a great cover corner, but a bit less physical against the run. And Edwards, no longer needed at corner, is going to bounce inside. Hoyt, the faster of the backers between he and Jones, is going to spy Cornelius on this play, but I really like this design. He's going to have a trigger to close, which I'm going to highlight here. So as a spy, they usually shadow the quarterback, and then if the quarterback looks to run, that's when you close it down. But Hoyt's trigger is a little bit different. He knows he's going to close to the right because the rush is designed to force Cornelius that way. They know that Cornelius wants to escape the pocket. It's what he does. If there's inside pressure, he's going to get outside in that direction. So they're deliberately creating an opening by having Oakman attack the B gap, intentionally blowing his contain. It's not a mistake on his part. And as soon as Cornelius takes the bait and rolls to his left, which is exactly where Toronto wants him rolling, Hoyt is going to fire to the outside. Unfortunately for Toronto, Hoyt gets picked up. It's a pretty nice move on the offensive line, and the coverage is a little too far off. So this, I guess we'll call it a whip route or a bang out from Walker is wide open for the first down. But it still shows excellent defensive creativity. The Buffalo Bills did this exact same thing to Patrick Mahomes this weekend. They lured him into taking an apparent escape route only to have a spy come crashing down on him. 2nd and 10, so we got the same defensive personnel, except Sanko is in now for the injured Priester. This is a bit later in the game. Now, look at the fun that we can have with Edwards inside here. Edmonton's going to pick this up well. Hoyt is mugging, hoping to draw the attention of the right guard. That would be key because it would leave the left tackle matched up with Barlow. And the reason Toronto wants that is because Edwards is being sent around the outside from way off. And if the right tackle does take Barlow, then Edwards can just walk right in. But sadly for Toronto, the Edmonton line plays this almost perfectly. The guard widens out to take Barlow, and Garnett ends up picking up Edwards. Mwamba is coming from the field side, but the Elks play that really nicely too. It's a really nice pressure look, and Cornelius gets bailed out a little bit with a gorgeous catch from Jackson between 3 defenders, and it's just enough for the first down. But all sorts of cool things happening here on Toronto's defensive side. All right, now we're going to get into the really aggressive calls, which were working extremely well all night. This is the second week in a row where Toronto has sent extreme heat, which goes against their established identity as a bend but don't break team. I'm not sure they are anymore, at least not 100% of the time. They still are in the middle parts of the field, but when they need a play, Coach Mace will dial up cover 0. So we got 8 guys showing at the snap, leaving only 4 in coverage. And I know you're saying, wait, Ben, if there's 6 eligible receivers and there's 4 guys in coverage, why is it still called cover 0, not something like cover -2? It's still cover 0 because Brown and Arsenault are both being covered. But as soon as the Argos see them both stay at home to pass protect in this sort of max protect look, everybody goes. Mechie's job is to occupy Arsenault here so that Shaq can come free around the outside, and he impacts this play big time. Just as Cornelius is going to reach the ball, Shaq, who's a free runner, is able to get to him, turn his shoulders a little bit, and force an errant throw. And downfield, Amos does a great job sticking with his man and getting his head around so that he can see the ball and bring in the pick. Amos is the one that gets the credit here, but it's the rush that caused this ball to sail. It's the timing, it's the speed, it's the play design, and Amos gets the pick. Again, we got 0, and again, it's a critical moment in the game. Edmonton up by 8 with 5 minutes to go. They're already in field goal range. This time, only Brown is going to stay into block, so 7 is their max on this blitz. And it's a pretty standard 6-man protection. The center is going to be occupied by Hendricks, and that's going to force the guards to cover the A gaps and the tackles to cover both B gaps. So that leaves 2 free rushers, 1 on either side, and only 1 Kevin Brown to pick them up. So it's pretty standard practice in this situation to have the back take the blind side rush. It depends on the play call, the protection call, what the QB likes, but this is pretty normal because the QB can't see the blind side. That's why it's called the blind side. So Brown is going to come across and get a piece of Jones, and that's going to leave Shaq as the unblocked defender. And ideally, that's where you have your unblocked guy, so the quarterback sees him coming. But it creates trouble here because Ford is in the game at this point, and Ford, who knows he's got Arsenault hot, is going to immediately go that way. But Shaq has been around. He knows exactly where Ford has to go with this ball, and he's going to do everything he can to get in this window. He times his jump perfectly. He blocks the pass. It sails up into the air, and then Royce Mechie, who was coming in hard here to pick up Arsenault, sees the play the whole way, picks the ball off easily. This was a huge turning point in the game caused by this pressure. And as much fun as that last one was, this might be my favorite play of the game. This is also 0, but it's better disguised for one. And it's as close as I've seen to what I call the swarm defense. And this is a defensive system I've been asking for since way back with the original hiring of Coach Young as DC back in early 2020. I was promised everything under the sun, from blitzes to exotic looks. Everybody said it's going to be the most aggressive defense you've ever seen. I've been waiting for it. Swarms are great because you've only got one down lineman. You've got guys in unusual spots. In this case, you're one of your linemen, Jagger Davis, is coming from a linebacker spot, for instance. And Shaq is going to end up blitzing too. He's coming in from the Sam spot. It's so tough for offensive linemen to figure out what's going on in this play, especially because Shaq does a pretty good job of holding off until late. This time, Edmonton doesn't have the protection quite down. They get a little bit lucky here, but they don't have this blocked correctly. Brown sees Shaq late. He never is able to really get to him, and Jones is free coming off the edge from the blind side. They are lucky because Cornelius sees him. He's looking to his left from the beginning. He picks up Jones, the blitzer. However, he is able to initiate a little bit of a backdoor escape, which all mobile quarterbacks love executing. And this is a critical moment here. It seems as though Cornelius has broken contain as Jones comes flying in aggressively, because even though he's being sent on a blitz, he still has responsibilities, and he seems to have blown it. Or has he? So this is one of my favorite kinds of tackles. It's low percentage, but man, is it exciting. With every inch of his reach, Jones is going to save the day with what is known as a tap tackle. This is an absolute last resort when everything else has failed and all you can do is reach 1 foot with the tips of your fingers. You tap the ball carrier's heel in an attempt to knock it into his other foot, and that will trip him up. Again, it's low percentage. It's extremely difficult to execute. Jones succeeds and possibly saves the game. Edmonton they're forced to punt because of this sack, and then the Argos would go on to score the go-ahead touchdown after that. So this was a game-saving tap tackle by Jones. The plan coming into this game was to show very little, but Coach Mace sort of had his hand forced when the Elks got out to a big lead early on. Then the question remains, what else is Coach Mace sitting on with this critical back-to-back series against Montreal looming on the horizon? Be sure you look for it on Saturday. Thanks so much for watching this X's and Argos film session. My name is Ben Grant. I'll see you next time.